Karibu kwenye taarifa zetu. Waziri wa Kawi Davis Chirchir anasubiriwa kutoa taarifa kuhusu ukosefu wa nguvu za umeme nchini hapo jana. Aidha, hiyo jana taifa lilishuhudia giza, huku uwanja wa ndege wa kimataifa wa JKIA ukikumbwa na hitilafu ya umeme. Mwanahabari wetu Gatete Njoroge anahudhuria kikao hicho, na kwa sasa naarifiwa kwamba waziri anaanza kutoa taarifa yake.
Members of the Fourth Estate, the management, Bwana PS, the Board of Kenya Power and Lighting Company, led by the chair lady, Brenda Masinde, and I saw Logan. And the management team, we've got Dr. Siror, we've got Kenjen, Peter Njenga, and behind me we've got Dr. John Mativo of Ketrako. Good morning. Is it afternoon already? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah, sorry, you've had to wait a bit. We've been working to, you are aware that yesterday we lost the grid, almost 100%, though we remain with parts of Western Kenya. And the questions we're now asking is, why so frequently? Because on August 25th, this year, and later on, sometimes on the 11th of November, we had similar breakdowns, though the one of November was not as major, when we had a breakdown of some conductor at Carrier 2, compared to the one of August, when we lost the whole country. So we have been meeting yesterday. When it happened, I was flying in from Dubai, and I experienced firsthand the anger because I was at the airport when the belt stopped, and therefore we could not get our luggages. The generator did not take off immediately, and it's a challenge that as a country we are really ashamed of, and we need to address it. But we do know why the problem is, and we've met as a team today. I went to the National Control Center, and I was there with the whole team, including the chair lady, the PS, and all the senior managers, as they restored the network the whole night. And even as we speak this morning, we are finalizing the restoration. And it is something we must pay attention to as a country, so that we build the kind of country we would like investors to be proud of, the kind of country we would like all of us to be proud of, because when there is no power, it impacts on the health institution, it impacts on every walks of life, and it is not something that anybody would pride of to have this kind of downtimes. I've got a written statement which I will share with you, but allow me to basically go through it very quickly, and we can do the question and answer, because I said we know where the problem is and we are addressing those challenges. It's bound to happen again, but we will look at serious maintenance. But the gist of it is lack of investment in the network for a long time. And when I go through my statement, you'll appreciate that the fact that we've continued to connect customers on the last mile, we've continued to build industry, and we've not built the network in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And there is so much constraint in the transmission of electrons from wherever they are generated. And sometimes the network trips when it is overloaded. Yesterday was caused by an overload between Kisumu, Moroni, when there was sudden demand, and the line that between Kisumu and Moroni is dimensioned to carry 80 megawatts. When the line went down, it was carrying 120 megawatts, and suddenly there was a demand of an additional 20 megawatts on that line. For a line to be carrying 149 megawatts when it is designed for 80, it felt threatened, and it dripped and cascaded down to the rest of the country. So on the 10th December 2023, yesterday, at about 7:33 p.m. in the evening, the country experienced a partial blackout on on the electric power system, with Musaga substation supplying parts of western region remaining on supply from Uganda. The system demand at the time of incident was 1,732 megawatts, with the hydros performing well, the geothermal performing well. The thermal and wind was at its optimal, and so was the Ethiopia. We have a power purchase with Ethiopia, which we've signed at 200 megawatts. It was transmitting at 194 megawatts at that time. So it was working well at that total. And we had a spinning reserve from the hydros. A spinning reserve is, if anything happens, the spinning reserve will pick up and support the network. So there was enough spinning reserve to be able to support the network. So it wasn't as such lack of adequate power in the system. What was the sequence of events? The Moroni substation is supplied via two transmission links, Olkaria, Kibos, Kisumu, Moroni, and the second line, which evacuates most of the hydros from this side, goes to through Juja to Lesos and Moroni. The two lines mainly supply electricity to western South Nyanza and South Rift region. So when Lesos is the hub, that supplies western Kenya, South Nyanza, and South Rift. At that particular time, 7:33 p.m., the Kisumu Moroni 132 power line dripped, arising from some system constraint. Like I've mentioned, it was having to carry 149, which it could not bear because it is designed to carry 80 megawatts. The loss of the Kisumu Moroni line led to sudden increase in power flow on the Juja Lesos Moroni link, leading to overload at Olkaria, transformer, Dandora, Juja, transformer links. This led to a cascade of generation drips, resulting in widespread power outages. However, parts of western region, including Bungoma, Kakamega, Busia, remain on supply from Musaga substation using the alternative source of supply that we get from Uganda. The power restoration started immediately, and by 1 in the morning, 60% of the customers had been restored. You would have noticed, if you were still awake, that at about 11 p.m. at night, specifically 11:53, we had another sudden drip that we were able to restore immediately, because when you're restoring, like I mentioned before, you need to match supply and demand. And we had a small, we're trying to do it quickly, and there was another drip at 23:53, which was contained very quickly. The Kenya electricity grid is currently operating suboptimally. I asked the engineers, what do you mean by suboptimally? With limited spinning reserves, low inertia, high production proportion of intermittent generation, low hydro generation, and insufficient voltage control. This condition makes the system vulnerable to systems disturbances. When I give you the statement, I will have talked to the proposed mitigation to remove some of those system constraints. Like, one, the western part of Kenya is serviced, like we said, by Olkaria and the hydros, the 7 cascade hydros, and the transmission links are currently constrained because industry has been growing, the power users have been growing, and we have not upgraded the transmission network. And we are using an 80 megawatts dimension a transmission link to transmit 140 megawatts. And you would only expect it to drip to be able to save itself. So what we are doing, members of the media and Kenyans, is we are building a line, an alternative line to support west of Kenya from Olkaria through Bomet, through Narok, Narok, Bomet, all the way to Awendo, to be able to support the transmission that goes through Lesos, like I've mentioned, and therefore be able to remove the constraint and improve the capacity of carrying more megawatts to the western part of the country where we don't have much generation. The loan facility has been signed and we are ready to start. We're getting funding from South Korea and Africa Development Bank. and we are at the tendering stage, and we should be able to start building that network. However, construction of a network of that capacity is not a quick fix. It will take some 20 months, but we'll be working on how to mitigate the challenge of constraint on the transmission network to be able to avoid the system being overloaded. We are also constructing a new 132 to 33 kV Sondu station or line and substation to further improve the supply to South Nyanza. If we were to have enough time to talk about how we service South Nyanza from Moroni to Chemosit, Sotik, to Kigathi, Ndiwa, and then Awendo, we could actually service by building a direct link from Sondu to Ndiwa and be able to avoid overloading the line going through Sotik to Ndiwa and causing those kind of challenges. We are also increasing the 220, 132 kV transformer capacity at Lesos to evacuate additional power to that from Olkaria to western part of the country and the North Rift region. We are also fast-tracking the completion of Kimoka. Kimoka is a station out of Kikuyu, somewhere here. Mala substation, which is being done by Ketraco to deload the Dandora, the Nairobi North, what we refer to as Nairobi North line. So these are all constraints where the lines are overloaded. They are not able to carry the load which is demanded by the customers at the extreme end. We also have declining spinning reserves because of lack of generation for a while. You know, we had a moratorium which was placed by government, and when we removed that moratorium, Parliament placed another moratorium. So we've not been able to work on new PPAs to be able to give us enough power. So we currently have a diminishing spinning reserve in line with the increasing base load. We need more spinning reserve. And to that end, KenGen is currently replacing the existing hydro turbines, runners with modern ones that will have capability of bigger operating range. This will address the need of spinning reserves in the short term. We also have lack of plant to provide auxiliary services in Asha for resilience, or resilience for that matter. Implementation of High Grand Falls project in eastern and as well as other potential hydro projects in North Rift, South Nyanza, and West region to support frequency regulation and base load. We also need to fast track the implementation of battery energy storage system that will help to address the intermittence of the variable energy and provide voltage stability. What are we saying briefly? That might sound, you know, and the engineers right there. We did say we have two major challenges. We have challenge of generation. For a while, we did not have enough rains, and we were very down on the hydrology in Masinga. In fact, we have not started generating out of Masinga to date, in spite of the heavy rains. We are generating only out of Kamburu, Kitaru, Kindaruma, and Kiambere. For good reasons why we have not started pushing Masinga because of the challenge of maybe flooding in Garissa. But for a long time, we have not generated out of Masinga because there was not enough water. It was down completely. But having had the rains, and when we can generate now out of Masinga, the transmission constraint is a challenge. Like if we need, for example, 200 megawatts in the western part of the country, the transmission links can only say carry 100 megawatts, to put it in simplistic term. And therefore, when the system tries to draw more power to support the 200 megawatts, the line gives way because it cannot carry that capacity. And that is why we are building alternative routes through Narok. Why Narok Sotik? We build Olkaria Narok. That one has been built already, 132 kV line. We have built Chemosit all the way to Bomet, and the link between Narok and Bomet, which will then complete the link all the way down to Awendo, will give us that relief so that we do not have these challenges of the network dropping every so often. So we know the problem. The problem is lack of investment in the transmission network. And you do know that today the transmission network in spite of the unbundling of the energy sector into generation, which is done by KenGen and the IPPs, the transmission network done by KETRACO, and Kenya Power doing the distribution, the off-taking. The challenge with KETRACO is that it is fully funded by government. And at times like now, when government is a bit constrained, and for a while, in the last several years, we have not invested as much in the transmission network. We are now bringing in the PPP, private-public partnership, to build some of the networks. We are giving out Gilgil, Thika, Mala to Konza, or is that Isinya? We are giving out a number of networks to be built by private capital. What does that mean? It relieves KETRACO from looking for funding from government and having the kind of challenges that we've had. So Bomet, Narok should have been built a while ago. In fact, it was a project that should have been built between 2016 and 2021. But with funding from the French Development Bank, but that did not materialize because of the challenges of funding. And so we are on it. That's why I said we know the problem, we're trying to address it. This time round, we hope we'll get it right and be able to sort out the Western Kenya voltage and frequency challenges which keep dripping the network. So that was the problem yesterday. We are working on mitigation measures to see, even as we take the long haul building of the networks, because building a line of about 90 kilometers will not be done in 2 days. We will work with the engineers to see the mitigation interventions that will relieve the overvoltage or the capacity of the lines, so that we are able to have alternative routes to be able to support the network. Like I've said, we are doing a new bay in Lesos with a third transformer to be able to relieve one of the links. We are going to see whether we can do a 33 kV line between Narok and Bomet, so that as we build the long haul line, which will take about 20 months, we are able to reduce the constraint on the transmission network and be able to remove the challenge of constant power outages. The other one, which really is regarding generation and more importantly the transmission links for Western Kenya, one of the mitigations or intervention that will be going back with the engineers to sit on and give some straight answers as we look at you in the eye is load shedding. What would need to be done, instead of overloading a line and causing the whole country to trip, we would be able to remove some feeders and therefore lessen the power demand that flows through a line, and therefore be able to only carry the amount of power which the line can carry. So instead of pushing the lines to an overload, we will basically give the line the load that it can carry, and therefore have some kind of scheduled load shedding, so that we do not unnecessarily have to bring down the whole country because of an overload which cascades all the way down. But more importantly, have a scheduled load shed in particular areas where the lines are seriously constrained. That is not to say we don't have enough power, but where a line is constrained and it cannot carry so much power, why push the line to carry what it cannot carry and cause a national trip? So we'll be scheduling some minimal load shedding, and we'll work with the various Kenyans and the leaders to understand why the load shedding may be necessary, so that we do not continue having to experience the kind of national blackouts we have seen in the short while. Thank you very much. Can we start from here and come this side?
Thank you. My name is Waziri Davis Chirchir. At the beginning of the statement, you said that after establishing where the problem was from and towards the end, just in clarity, says that it's now clear that it's been a poor investment. Just help me understand that. The last one, have you been enlightened on what in terms of revenue was lost as a testimony?
Can we take the second one and the lady just immediately?
My name is Jasmine from JKIA, and I want to understand, because when we talk about infrastructure development, building of lines, that's going to take us a long time. So are we promising Kenyans a bit more, a lot more blackouts as we wait for the lines to be
me start with immediately that one. I did talk to interventions that we are looking at to relieve the constraints on the network by ensuring that we do not carry a load which cannot be carried by those lines. For example, if you talk to Moroni, Kisumu, Moroni, Chemosit, the line is so constrained. It is designed for 80 megawatts, like I said, but as of yesterday, it was carrying 120. When an intermittence happens and the line has to carry more load, it picked another 20 megawatts and went to 149 megawatts. When it is designed for 80, the system just gave way. So instead of waiting for the system to give way, just dimension it and make sure that you remove some of the demand. Because what happens in power, power will be sucked by when you switch on all your homes in the evening. The system will, however constrained the lines are, it will try to carry the power to your house. And if the conductor is not built to the capacity to carry all that power, it then gives way, like when you get a drip in your house. So that's what happens. What we're going to do, like I mentioned, is to work on quick fixes, which will include, like I said, putting a new bay, a new transformer in the source, looking at how do we quickly have a solution between Moroni, Chemosit to deload that link and have a quick solution that goes from Moroni to Ndiwa. How do we quickly, even as we build the long haul line between Narok and Bomet, can we have a 33 kV line to support the Bomet area, which can be built in 3 months using poles, concrete poles instead of the big towers. So yes, we've talked to intervention, and we do appreciate the fact that it is not tenable to continue having the kind of national blackouts that we have. But unfortunately, like I said, when we have not done an investment for a long time in the network, these are the results of what happens. And even if we fix it today, you give us the money today, we cannot build a network in 1 day. It will take 20 months. But in those 20 months, like I said, we are working with the engineering team to see the mitigation measures to be able to reduce that, including load shedding certain pockets of the regions which are demanding so much power and therefore overloading the links. So we are working on that. We'll have a fairly comprehensive solution by this Thursday to see how to mitigate that challenge. As regarding, I don't know where I fumbled, but I said, well, when I started, I said we know the problem. We do know the problem. I think the challenge when you get a national blackout, the first thing that comes to mind, if you're in my shoes, is that have we been hit? And then we get down and learn that it is an overload. Then we feel good. Because if the network had gone down completely, like I was being told of what happened in South Sudan yesterday with the line, I was supposed to have a meeting with the South Sudan leadership today in petroleum, and they have not come because their line was hit in the last 2 days, and they are not able to transport their product. So when it is a challenge of an overload, we are able to build the system very quickly while excluding the overloading centers. And that is why when it drips, when your house drips, you don't just go and switch it back on. You try and find out what the problem is. Why is it dripping? And then therefore, yes, we understand the problem. We've got funding, particularly for the very seriously constrained Kisumu, Moroni, Chemosit, feeds a number. It's got about 7 feeders, including Sotik, all the way to Kigati